Hi everyone, thanks once again for all the great work that you've been doing so far. So it's really impressive. So we're getting to the last week. So I'm going to go through module 4, in which there are many little details that we are going to plan in order to complete most of our unit plan. So let's go through it right now. So first of all, if you click on the module notes, it might help, of course, in order to give you hints on what to do. And the first thing that you'll see for the first learning engagement is that there are 3 parts to the unit plan, and that you might have questions in all sections. So we are going to focus on the 2 first sections, the inquiry sections and also the action sections. And here you can see that it includes content related and conceptual questions. So it's really important to consider that. So you have the choice of either completing the template. Well, it's a choice actually to complete the template or not. Of course, you can list the topics and the concepts from the SOI, but the real important part is to complete questions. But even though it's like what is suggested, it might not be what I really prefer. So I'll refer, because here you would have like to really write like in the inquiry section, like your questions, and also what questions you would have in the action sections, and these are pretty different. So you can use it like in order to go from your SOI and also from your topics, mathematical topics and skills, and then you have to build questions around that. So this is one possibility, but let's go directly to the unit plan. And you'll see that I'm going to refer to that throughout the video. So until now, we have like filled in that part for the inquiry section. And now for the inquiry questions, here it's really about the SOI. Okay, which means that these are focused on concepts and also on the global context exploration that you have chosen, because remember that here we are going to deal with the global context exploration. So the questions around that are the questions that go here. They are not content related, because you want the other teachers to read your statement of inquiry, once again, in the inquiry questions, and be willing to work with you collaboratively in order to do some interdisciplinary work. So this is like the basis, which can be applied and transferred actually in any other further like studies that the students will do. So for it to be able to be transferred, it needs not to be like that much content related. Well, I mean, from one subject to the next. So this is the idea here. That thing here is that to remember that when we have questions like what or when or whatever, questions like these go in factual questions. For conceptual questions, we would have questions generally starting with how, so, and why, for instance. So you'll see that this is easy conceptual when we are thinking about how some things work or why. So we're pretty much in conceptual questions, and in debatable questions, anything else like is it blah blah blah, does, you know, something. I know that generally like the teachers don't have any difficulties with that. So the idea is really to like bring up some debate, often on the global context exploration, if I may say. But sometimes also in the concepts. So here is the first section. So this questions, we need at least one question for each category here in the unit plan. And it has to be, not to be related to the content. But some teachers will naturally think about the mathematics, of course, at first. So it is okay as well. And there is a place for that. When we go in the action section, of course, in the content, it's all the content that you see, the topics and skills that will be developed either from your national program or through the IB. we can ask the questions here, but we can also, and often we have questions that the teachers want to address, and also questions that the students you think that will ask. So often in the first time that we are building a unit plan, perhaps we might not have all of the questions. But then when we are teaching, sometimes the students bring up interesting questions that we will write in order to improve our unit plan. So same thing here, you have to have, well, actually it's asked for you to have two questions of each category. Donc, so two questions, two factual questions, two conceptual questions, and two debatable questions that you are going to address throughout the unit. But remember, a unit plan might be 20 to 24 hours because it has to be like more than just on one specific topics. Often we are talking about many things actually during the unit plan, and that we are going to these skills and topics, and so it's pretty easy to ask these questions. The questions can be either written there or they can be written in that part here in the learning experiences and teaching strategies, because the idea here is that chronologically, so think about the order in which the topics and skills are going to appear. Remember that these questions are content related, but also linked to the SOI or to these inquiry questions that you have asked in that part. Often we use the same sentence almost, but we add the mathematical part, and that question which we would have asked here in the inquiry questions is going to be detailed in that part. So in either column, it doesn't matter, but the idea is that when you have a question here, I prefer asking the question here, well, as I've said, chronologically. So suppose you have question 1, and then you have your response. How will you do it in class? But I'll say response 1, just in order for you to see what I mean, and then you would ask the second questions. And since they are inquiry questions, the idea here is that we want to make sure that throughout the unit they are inquiry-based learning, and that is often induced by the fact of asking questions and to are trying to think about the strategies, the learning experiences that you are going to have in order to have that inquiry. So personally, I prefer writing the question here on the left, on the same line. So I have my question here, and then I have my answer in the second column. And then in the formative assessments, what you are going to see is that sometimes we try to align things. So how what will be the formative assessment for that question? Actually, how will I make sure that the students understood? So this is the FA, let's say, formative assessment for associated to question 1. So that is the main thing, and so on. Sometimes there are things that go throughout the unit. We can still write it that way. And same thing for differentiation. When we have, don't remember that here you have learning engagement activities. So if here in my response I have 2 activities, then I might have here a formative assessment for the first learning engagement activity and formative assessment for the second activity. So I can give details about that, and you see that everything is still aligned. And same thing here in the differentiation. Say, how will I differentiate for students who have who think that it is pretty easy, and same thing, how will I differentiate for students who have difficulties, perhaps by scaffolding. So this is differentiation for learning activity 1, and so on. Okay, so we can align things. So you see that the questions are really important, and this is pretty much what we are going to address in Module 4. So I was just wanted you to understand that if you think about your questions, always link to the mathematics first, then take your questions, take out the math, and then fill the inquiry sections afterward. But it doesn't matter which way you're doing it. So let's go back to our module. So in the inquiry question forum, I've talked about it since the beginning. Once again, here, you see that I remind you what are the questions, and then you can use the resources. Of course, you have the mathematics guide for the topics, and here the unit planner, but the evaluating MYP unit plans that I haven't talked about very much since the beginning is a document where people from the IB can evaluate if your unit plan is good. So we would like, with time, to get to the sharing section. Of course, if you're new to the MYP, we don't expect you to get to the sharing section. Some teachers have taught for many years and are still at, let's say, the using level. So here I have a part for the inquiry questions, and you see, like I've said, that it might include teacher and student generated inquiries and everything. And then if I go further on, when I get to the action part, here is the part on the content, which I've talked about. This is like the column which is here. And then you get to the information about the learning experiences and teaching strategy. You see that what the students will do and in what order. And most importantly here, we want to write in the unit plan what is really IB related. If you're doing things which is really not relevant to the IB, perhaps you might skip it for now, and later on you can completely, if you were to send your unit plan to the IB, then you might complete it. But at first we are really going to think about everything that we've seen so far that represent the IB teaching and learning, and then to write everything that goes with that. Okay, and then we have the formative assessment and the differentiate part that we're going to see just right afterward. And also there is the part about the ATL, which we are going to do also in module 4. So let's go back to the module 4. The second learning engagement, it's about the approaches to learning. So we have to think about an explicit, to choose an ATL skill indicator that you want the students develop throughout the unit. You need to identify only one. Okay, so the reference for that are pages 107 to 114 of the MYP from principle into practice. For instance, here I have in the communication skills, for instance, you will have something that of course we do in mathematics, which would be understand and use mathematical notation. So whatever, this is an ATL skill indicator. So we have to select the ones that we want to teach. And then we have to think about one explicit and one implicit learning experience. Once again, it's detailed in the module notes. For instance, when we have to organize and depict information logically, which goes pretty much with our criterion C, then one explicit activity might be to bring up lines of learning, but all mixed up, and then you ask the students to put it in order or something, or perhaps for students to assess what another teacher has done in order to see if he can understand the lines of reasoning. So that's something that can be done, and implicit is pretty much during the task. And here, once again, we want to get to a good level, so I once again gave the resources, and then we have to just write a sentence that goes actually here in the model. This would go in that part in order for students to achieve the strand of the criterion, students must, and then we write the skills indicator. I'll do a second video to complete it.